Friend of mine that I know from Hawaii, she suggested that I make more videos, or at least go live, because I was telling her she was looking for me and thought she could find me on Facebook, but I, log off of Facebook every once in a while. I mean, during all this stuff that's been happening, it's like impossible to ignore, and you just get, emotionally involved, and then you become a keyboard warrior. You're, messaging back and forth, and you're posting memes, and you're doing what everybody else is doing, but you're still passionate about your feelings, and you're just allowing like others' images and graphics to, illustrate how you're feeling, and the simplicity of it all instantly. Uh, so she was just like, "Why don't you just make videos, and just talk to people about what you do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not trying to, make a podcast or anything like that, or it's just, I feel just like everybody else does. But I mean, if I knew for a fact that, my voice or my face or whatever like that would be good enough or strong enough to, help a better understanding of how I feel, not just politically, but just like, I don't know, just holistically, when it comes to values of things that are interesting points, that seem to be high end discussions, that shape the country when it comes to, I don't know, these are huge topics that everybody's landing on, and they stay on them, and they're aired every day, in the form of government, in the form of the political system. And before it wasn't like that, or as much. You had your regular, broadcast news, affiliates like NBC, ABC, CNN, and Fox. I believe has only been on air for like 28 years or something ridiculous. 28 years. Look, Fox is an offspring. It's an offshoot. It was an alternative, thing that was invested in. That was a small company to go right, basically, for the thinkers that were kind of the Americano esque right wingers to, just kind of join, airing, their ideas, collectively together. Uh, and then it became something, and then so that's where the argument in the debates come from when channel, uh, you know, challenging, other, you know, bigger companies or companies that we're more familiar with that have been around for a long period of time. So, yeah, sure, they're all revolve around the prejudices that they feel, or they expose, about general people that are within, those companies that work there. And so it leans either to the right or it leans to the left, or it's, progressive, liberal, or there's really no common ground. So a lot of people try to talk about like if or should there be another party, and sure, I mean there should be, but I guess I mean where's that going to come from? And then, we already have so much chaos. So for I mean, how many people live in this country? 300 million people or something like that. Um, and it's about the percentages of the people that are, you know, pushed, to defend and uphold the pride of the things that they feel that are the highest level of things in degree that need to be focused on in order for their safety or in order for their comfort or in order to support their ideals or you know so uh that's what it comes down to. It comes down to, dictating, a temperature, so to speak, on where the common interests are, and in the middle is where everybody fights. And because, I mean, everybody, I mean, if you're talking individually, then yeah, sure, everybody has their own opinions about stuff, but you're being swayed or influenced by some form of government, whether it be, on a national level, all the way down to your local levels that are within, the, range or jurisdictions that are closer to you in the cities that you are. But they all, of course, have their connection in the whole grand scheme of things. And so I don't know if you have enough wisdom or knowledge to put them together and see where you fit in. And then that's where you lean towards on how it sounds for you in your head after you think them out. So, I mean, for me, it's like the moral integrity of the nation and the balancing, the fundamental principles of maybe the economy and education is a huge one, I think, because a lot of people don't talk about or they don't think about things that align when it comes to education and it comes to race. And, that's something I talk about a lot, and maybe people get the wrong interpretation or idea, but just because, I'm black and I mean, I think what it is it's expectations that come with the general standard like stereotypes that are imposed on people of all people, actually, not just black people, white people, Latino people, Asian cultures or whatever like that. Because I mean, how you learn is what you kind of have to defend if it's something that you don't feel like somebody else understands. And so it becomes a part of the public and it's a persona. And so therein lies a problem. Because, I mean, if you think about it, look, I'm 51 years old. I was born in 1974. So the textbook standard education that most people do in this country, regardless to where you are in all 50 states or whatever like that. But I mean, coming from the second city, Chicago, so we got that huge, large population. It gives me a kind of good sense in a way to talk about even some of the other cities that I haven't even visited. I've been to most states in this country, so there's a very few kind of like maybe northeast that I haven't even visited. But most larger cities like LA, New York, Chicago, and then the spider web of every little minor cities that are, suburbs and stuff like that that intricately flow down. I've visited so many places in the country, so the landscape really well. I've never had a problem like being able to kind of separate my travel identity with things that I learned from the root of the underbelly or the countercultures, in which, of course, are mainly my interest because I feel like that's where you meet the realest people, and they come from people that are probably a little bit more controlled, probably a little bit more believing in the identity of set fact or said like more makeshift concepts of what it's supposed to be when it comes to undermining principles of what should represent the people. Like you get your general policing and the values of like the culture and that shapes what people call America. Of course, I have had my little issues with even using the words and the terms America, just because if you break it down, and I think about what it extends from, where it comes from, the history, behind that. And right now, before I get too far ahead of my time, I mean, I guess I'll just kind of blend everything together. So it's about like recently we've had some Donald Trump's been talking about the Smithsonian and how it's presented the history of slavery and basically without any way of displaying a proper usage of creating a debate that would be even worth talking about, other than the nasty things that he allows his audience and he pushes on to his true social, is creating negatives, and that's rewriting the history on what I think that everybody needs to know. And that's the thing, is some people have the option, to challenge these things, or to, uh, discard them or accept them. And so it is unfortunate that people of color have horrible oppression that we relate to in the history of this country while we've been here, and has been, hundreds of years. But I mean, it hasn't been hundreds of years in where we have any balance or any equality. So it's not like it's pained for people to continue generation after generation after generation to say the same repetitive things all the time, and then the identity that comes from a person like me that has always been open-minded enough to, like, lend who I am as a person, uh knowing that I've pushed myself into situations that would be me being surrounded by people that don't look like me, opportunities to just kind of, like, change the shape of that. Because I mean, you automatically predict that anyways. You think that when you're around people, how is that, if I grew up, it was really diverse. At first it wasn't. We've become like one of the first black families in the little suburb that we grew up in outside of Chicago. So it's about a 32-minute drive from the city in the south suburbs. And so in the 70s, it was rural because there wasn't a lot of homes there. They were just modeling and building and developing still. And so it was just pretty much vast lands, and then little small communities, little neighborhoods that had nothing more than, uh, I mean, I guess in the beginning of where we lived in Woodgate. So in that little subdivision, there was probably, at the time, I mean, just going off the top of my head, I'd say 700 houses, if that. I guarantee you, it probably wasn't even really that much. I mean, there was about 12 major blocks, but on each block there was about anywhere between 15 or less homes that stretched to the other street, going, you know, east or west. So all I'm saying is like, learning is the major thing that has gotten us this far. And then when you feel as if you've gotten educated enough, then you start thinking about, what are you educated about? And therein lies the problem, because I think that is what happens is people want to argue about what they're educated about. So you're arguing with a variety of different things when it comes to substance from people, and then how to legitimize or respect who you're arguing with based off of, kind of things that we think shapes us in the culture of the United States, or how people talk, or the slang, or ethics. To me, it's ethics, because like I was getting to earlier, as I was saying, is like, we all learned on the same level as everybody else, regardless of what culture or color you are, or your background, ethnicity is, or whatever like that. How many general subjects are in grade schools? I'd say about 7 or 8 or whatever like that. So what I do is, you think about math, reading, English, history. I mean, in between those, you got like, physical education, and you have like maybe art. But so I'm sure I'm missing one or two. But you take those subjects and you think about the cultures that they extend from, that are the leading percentage of the cultures that are in the country, which are all European. So when people talk about like, I read online and people were like, oh, you choose to segregate your common understanding as to why people become the way that they become. So it's almost like me saying that, like, I have to defend my skin. I do, because I mean, I have a different understanding after thinking about it for so long and not fearing that I'm going to be rejected by my own for saying the things that I say. You have to articulate things correctly and share and not judge so far. So we got this going on in Chicago with ICE or whatever like that, you know, your deployment of the military there. And all I read online is people saying how bad Chicago is. Chicago is not really bad. And in fact, if it was so bad and it always has been so bad, then the people that live there in Illinois are a part of it. And so to recover something culturally, uh, I think with the identity of just accepting something, it being bad. You know, for a long time I was like, well, shit, this is bad. You know, you get on the damn Expressway 57 and you're coming from the city, and then you see rundown neighborhoods, to your left if you're going to the suburbs. And, you know, my interest is well, why are these so opposed? Why are these scary neighborhoods? I mean, like Robbins or something like that. And people are saying, oh my gosh, well, you know, the niggas in there and, you know, it's thug life and all this and this and that and this and that. Look, my feelings on that would be is now I get it. You know, if you kind of speak down upon people for so long and you cast them to a side, then ultimately, you know, what you're going to get are people that are impoverished and they personally don't feel like they're accepted in society. And that vibe, it's the vibration. The vibration is going to be lessened because of the opportunities that, you know, maybe I have that they didn't, are judged because that's what is aired. So that's something that is taught. So you're taught to fear that. I mean, maybe had people had rushed to go to these neighborhoods rather than avoid them, and the government had, you know, money and funds aside to help assist these neighborhoods, like maybe recover after like the war or, you know, back in the 50s and the 40s, then we would have had a better understanding of how we can branch neighborhoods culturally. But I mean, all those neighborhoods used to be something else. They once were like maybe German or, especially on the south side, was more like Irish and Polish communities because some of the mom and pop things that are major brands like, you know, that stand throughout the whole entire country still exist. So what happens is it's the redlining and the racial profiling, and then you get the economy challenges. So it shows a bigger prejudice that's in the country when it, like, I mean, I'm sure it happened when, you know, my parents moved to the suburbs. You know, of course, you know, there's a newspaper article back in the 70s, and it's inappropriate because back in those days the etiquette was different. So, or maybe they just had none at all, and they didn't know how to write. And you're crossing racial lines, and people weren't. You didn't know how to speak to one another, but wanted to let you know that yes, you're accepted and you're welcomed. You know, we're in that community. There's maybe 12 black families at the time. I mean, the Whitfields lived there, we lived there, the Vincents lived there, the Beasleys lived there, Marty Mays' family lived there. All those were tiny little nooks there, and there was little segregated parts of Woodgate actually, where black people were. We were on Pheasant Road, and you know, some were like Anthony Standifer's family, and they were like a block over, but it was like clumps, like little intricate clumps, like around Alamong, and they put us in those. So your neighbors would be, but then the other blocks were just all white, you know. Um, and then, of course, then I didn't notice anything because, I was just like a little kid. I just wanted to hang out with everybody else. So these are just examples, but it is the education. I mean, we're so like what I was saying with the scholastic programs in schools is from Jumpstart, from the inception of government here in this country, is we were all taught the fundamental practices that extend from other cultures that had been here, been coming over here since, I don't know what, the 1400s, 1500s, but they didn't develop until like the late 1700s and 1800s, and they had their wars, and no one had suspected what was happening. It probably came off so much as trade and interest of different cultures at first. So that's why they call them settlers, but there's nothing settling about it because it was all ruse. Those boat rides took forever. A lot of people didn't survive. But then once they realized that, the resources that were natural here could be abundant, then they posseed up. There was European cultures collectively, so they got here. And then when they got here, they fought with one another. But then they realized that, before there was ever anyone called white or black or brown or whatever like that, uh, they would have been outnumbered. The white people would have been outnumbered. So what did they do? They kept collecting black people from Africa, specific parts, and bringing us over to develop. So to develop an entire country with all these maps and grids and geographical areas that were located mainly in the South. So you eliminated, our native tongues. We weren't able to speak to one another, and neither were, I don't know, there's like 238 tribes of, indigenous people in this country. So a lot of them were also, their languages were taken away from them, as well as the poisoning and the alcoholism that was going on before Africans had come here. Figuring getting them drunk, loosening them up, is a better way to get them to sign away against themselves. And it's a cunning thing, and that's the oath of what happens when it comes to having a skin tone that that's what made the American culture. So it's named after a human being. It's named after an Italian man. So a lot of my problems come from that, knowing what you know and what you can read, and what I've always known about Amerigo Vespucci. He's an Italian rapist. He raped and he pillaged, but he also helped, when it comes to the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, all in that whole entire quest, places to get in, loop in, like around the waters over there, which would be like more Martha's Vineyard, coming in actually from what we would think would be the coastal line that loops around Florida to the East Coast. They drew all these maps, and entering from that way, that's why DC is located the way it is. That's why it's called the district capital. So those were the people that were designated for them to screw over first, because they're the powerful tribes that were over there. There was a larger group of the Lakotans, and so all of them broke down and they spread, they kept going north. And some of them were coming from Canada, but they were being pillaged because at first they didn't know that they were fighting anybody. This was a bunch of white people, and some of them didn't even know. There wasn't a system. There wasn't like a telepathic system that, they were able to commonly communicate with other people. Like say if they were like in, Arizona or something like that, that were having problems. These people aren't as friendly as you think that they are. But if black people, like I was speaking of on the south side of Chicago or the west or whatever, like there's documentaries about it. If nowadays it's 2025, and I started thinking about it, and they were talking about the national dropout rate, and they're talking about crime, and you're talking about like gun violence, and you're talking about things that are usually associated with us. I've always understood it. I'm not saying anything to justify it. I'm saying is teach us something about ourselves. After what you most of the kids that I know that are black kids in this country, by the time they're in like fifth grade, they don't give a fuck. The hell you gonna do? You're gonna drop out because there's nothing there for you. So you go to school, and the stereotype would be the only interest is they're in there for the sports or the entertainment, like the band practice or whatever like that. That's arts and crafts or because I mean they have art classes and they have music classes or whatever like that. But it seems like those are the only things that we excel in. That's not true. I mean, we excel in science and we excel in math and we excel in English and we excel in, but it's just not highlighted. So the attributes become devastating when we are really good at those things because they get taken away. Look at the Smithsonian, or just look at any other historical societies that are in this entire country where it's lesser of something of an importance. And they give us like 1 month to display who we are, and still no one's interested in. We talk about our major people that have been, invigorating for us commonly to share, like Martin Luther King or Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman, and then still people destroy these, and they're looking for all the negatives or whatever like that. It's just not interesting for the collective white cultures that are in this country that shape up Americans. So when they're talking about, like, Trump, I guess on the news yesterday was talking about, like, if you're caught burning a flag, then you're getting, like, imprisoned or whatever like that. The reason why my problem with the flag is uh, you know, yeah, sure, there's 14% of black people in this country, but uh, we're still here, okay? And the natives, the indigenous people, I hate calling them Native Americans. Why everybody? You don't even know why they accept that, but not a lot of them really do. But they're so minor with their voices. Is they just uh, don't discuss it as much. But I'll discuss it for them because I'm into it with them. So I'm just saying that, like, you, you have to have a degree of understanding why people are the way that they are. It's not about giving up. It's more about, like, you know, what if the larger portion of the people that are like, you ever talk to one of your white friends? They instantly know who the fuck they are. They're like, I'm half Dutch, I'm half Scottish, I'm half German, and I'm half Irish, and you can go in their house and you see all the motherfuckers on the mantle. You know what I mean? Before 23andMe, we didn't know where the fuck we came from. And since it's been so long since we've had the technology that can bring us together, uh, connecting the dots isn't easy. I mean, I know, like I said, when I was a little kid, it was the 70s and shit like that. And even my dad and my mom. My dad knew more about his background than, my mother. Of course, now I'm finding out more. My mother passed away when I was younger, you know what I'm saying? I was in my 20s. So I didn't have like a lot of time to ask her all these things. In my 20s, I was an energetic firecracker, crazy person, and just internalizing emotions a lot. And unbeknownst to me, she passed away. It's just something that happened, and I was devastated by that. And my dad just recently passed away this year, in February. But he spent 87 years, so all the years that I got with him, as I grew older, I was able to talk to him about things, that maybe he was even uncomfortable about, because he knows that I'm the person that is going to express it no matter what. I don't give a fuck if you like it or not. But I'm going to, but I put it the way I put it. And I want to be open about it. And I don't want people to misunderstand me, in which they're going to anyways. I have friends that misunderstand me. Or people take intricate pieces of things that, in details of what people say, and they loop it up into, things that frustrate them. And then they use the face or they use the name of the person, and then they tear that apart, you know. So a lot of it isn't ever fact, it's just more leans towards the person, you know, and the misunderstanding. And I don't care about that anymore, you know. I could care less. I used to care so much, and I don't know why I did, because I always wanted to be loved just like everybody else. Everybody wants to be loved. That's what everyone wants to do in their life. You know, you always want to be something. You create the who you are with the dynamics that you have. You express it no matter where you feel like you fit in or you don't fit in. You can always move on and find somebody on that level. But I just think that in this country, there's never been offering or inclusive. This inclusivity. We need inclusivity. And so for Jumpstart, but since it is such a racist country, and it always has been, but you know, it's dismantled cultures. So why would they implement that, you know, nationwide, you know, especially back when schools were, I mean, the Catholics, you know, all the things that were religious also intertwined with the scholastic programs nationwide. So therein lies another issue, because everybody does not, you know, maybe internally doesn't believe in the same things, or they always knew inside them that they had come from a different part of the hemisphere, you know, or, you know, the earth, you know, somewhere part on the other side of the equator, you know, like Africans, you know. So when they get over here, they're like, well, we have faith internally, but how can we develop it if it's being whipped the fuck out of us? You know, so you just join something else, like which would be like a adaptation of like you know, a belief structure that was commonly associated with white people from Europe, which is, you know, Catholicism, or, you know, being Methodist or Zion, and all these things that are attached to the things that they already have strength in within their cultures, like the Vatican and all this stuff. So really, nothing surprises me anymore, and the whole MAGA thing. And so when people be like, "Oh well, I hate that Dan Bird because he has no fucking pride. He hates America," and I'm like, "No, I don't hate America. You know what? I like what it is underneath, because that's the real thing. You know, start unearthing that, and then, you know, you be the archaeologist. That's what they need to teach, not take it out of the Smithsonian. You know, that's powerful to me. I mean, this country once would have been called Lakota. So they were agreeing on that. So there was like Cherokees that were very big, and there's different places on the map where there were larger tribes. But I mean, it would make more sense if they were just going to call the entire place Lakota Turtle Island. So with that under development, it was being taken away from them. Literally, it's like pulling the rug out from under people's feet, and they had no idea. And so this is where we are. So you establish a government, you write all these documents, and then you legitimize that, buy that, and you force that on other people. Everything else is mandatory. So for me to go to preschool and kindergarten and learn the ABCs, these are all things that are from Europe. So it's, you know, that's why I talk about prejudice and racism. There's different things. Racism, the word race, you know, is a part of the human race. The ism is basically the functioning. So racism, it functions. It's a systemic thing. So prejudice is the offspring of that. Prejudice is the defense mechanism that comes from racism. You know, I always create examples, but people would be like, "It's racist, man. You're just being racist." That's the problem today. Is people gaslight, or they want to redefine it. Look, in my opinion, and really, I mean, if you think about it, the continuity of how offensive things are really exposes the truest definition of what those two different things are that I just spoke about. Like racism. Racism is the destruction of entire races, like eradication of their civilizations under the force of other people's cultures. By inhibiting their abilities to communicate with one another, taking away their natural resources, taking away their religions, you know, uh, raping them, pillaging them, harming them, using symbolism to destroy them, and to fear that, to make other people fear them. And so when I guess, the Trump administration is saying these are just defamation, of the natural character, and without them saying that white people, that's what they're saying, and it's not all white people. So that's all I'm saying. Is some, the people that I know that I love that are white are just looped up inside all that, and they're just like, well, I can't defend. They can't defend, but they try, and but I mean, if they're going to go quiet and they're not going to say anything at all, then to me it's just more like, well, you are just as smart as me. Um, we grew up together. We had one another's backs, and I'm using your language to tell you that I haven't given up. Obviously. So racism is something that is just completely different. Prejudice is, I'm prejudiced. I'm just like, well, come on now. I mean, if it's ignorant, my prejudice is just a reaction to one's ignorant to the word, to racism. Not saying that black people can't be racist, or natives can't be racist, or Latinos can't be racist, but I mean, we don't have groups. We don't have. There's never been any other group of people that was funded. First of all, racism is an organization. It's a funded thing, and all the monetary things that we have seen, just like the wars that shape up all over, the world globally. That's all. White people started all the wars, every single one. So, and it's always been the same thing. It's always been, I want this land, blah, blah, blah. And then, so you want to get here in this country, since there's so many different cultures, there's so many different things that you want to protect, or you don't want to be seen as like you're against, And so when that comes up, then that's where people are just like isolated. They're like, well, he doesn't like Jews, or I'm saying, no, look, we've nosed ourselves in so many different things that we, the American culture is completely created. It's completely fucking created. Like back in, I guess, the 1600s or whatever like that. That's when I was talking about earlier, when people were like, on their mantles or whatever like that, when they're like, I'm 100% Dutch or whatever like that, and I'm like, no, you're not. But they were, 3 generations ago, So, but they realized that they couldn't segregate themselves. They had something to offer, and you looked like them, and it was the people that were, under rule that didn't look like them. So they had to posse up. Maybe Dutch motherfuckers and Italian people would not have gotten along. But, I mean, obviously, you could see that where crime is celebrated, like, New York, like Los Angeles and Vegas and Chicago. We'll take the examples of like the mob or whatever like that, take it in. The Italian people, and then there was the Irish mob or whatever like that. And all the movies that we, grew to love, The Godfather and Scarface and stuff like that. This is all celebrating white history. So black history, you can't talk to people about black history without them, smiting it, So when people talk about like, why is this associated with black? And this, look, black people are responsible for some of the greatest things that have gotten gaffled from them a long time ago, like So the Smithsonian, they should say that, look, I mean, we invented the stoplight. You can't go nowhere without that motherfucker. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So GPS, it was a black woman that created the GPS. Even essentially, the schematics for an airplane was not the Wright brothers. Okay, it was a black man. I believe his name was. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Maybe I'll think of it here in a minute. But I had done some research about it for quite a while ago, and I was just like, so it's about the credit. And then even if we did get the credit, somebody else had stole the idea, and then they capitalized on it, and then you open the dictionary, and it's a picture of somebody that doesn't look like you. So that's why people are the way that they are. They stay lumped up inside these neighborhoods that have never had any funds, never had promise, never had hope. You know, meanwhile, crime, I guess, if that's what you want to say, started in their communities when it goes back to like the 40s and the 30s and the 50s and stuff like that, when gangsterism was fashionable and shit with the Italians. They hid guns in those communities, away from the government that was chasing them down, the Elliot Ness type motherfuckers. So you can hide it in black communities because no one was trying to go up in there, So ultimately we were able to communicate with those people and, get a part-time job, sweeping some steps in front of a fucking bar. And, so it became territorial pissings, if the vibe is wrong. If you put a bunch of people that are impoverished that don't have we never got our shit anyways. We never got our 40 acres and a mule. Where the fuck is that? I believe that, sure, reparations would change a lot, but then it would also make a lot of hearts bleed. A lot of people would be crying and shit, And how do you do it now? There's so many people that are biracial and whatever like that. 81% of black people in this country have white in them. That's right. Or something else, and most of it is by slavery or by rape or, we took care of people that were biracial in the slave times because they were discarded. They were, there's a lot of babies that were born from black women by slave masters that the white people would not keep. So they were just forced on the black women that were, enslaved, that were working in the house to just take care of it. So they have 6 and 7 babies, and half of them aren't even theirs. Half of them aren't even to their marriages. Don't know your last names. Most black people in this country have, I'm not talking about Africans. The Africans, they didn't really start posseing up and coming over here until about 25, maybe 30 years ago. And still, it was very small and subtle then. But all of a sudden, you got so many things that are obvious that are going on in this administration, and it puts you in positions of just like disgust. And then when you express yourself, your white friends think that you're talking about them personally. And no, I'm not, unless you really don't even know what you're talking about. If you can't express yourself the way that I am right now, and you're casting yourself into a bin, and that means that you're highlighting the pride of something that you don't know anything about. So the whole slogan, "Make America Great Again," when was it ever great for the people that I've been discussing about this entire 20-something long video? It has never been great. So what does that sound like to me? It sounds like, for y'all and a few other people that kind of want to suck up to that, but then those are the people that they use. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, yeah, there's some black MAGA supporters, and there's some Hispanic MAGA supporters, and there's some Asian Hispanic. But I mean, all that stuff surfaces throughout the economics, and that can loop us up into believing that yes, we are wise enough, strong enough, and we're developed enough as a community as a whole to have a separation on where we need to go with how we are going to be inside a country that is always, of course, I mean, it's always been separate, and there's two different parties, and then people will be like, well, it was the Republicans that ended slavery and the emancipation. Look, no, it wasn't. It's just the titles. The titles shifted. It was 1938, I do believe, where the Dixiecrats or whatever the autocrats, Dixiecrats swapped with the Democrats, and then that left the party lines open. So they shifted from Republican to Democrat. Same values, same names. It's just that the Democrat Party was kind of veered more towards civil rights and kind of assisting people. They did not believe into the war. They didn't believe in Vietnam. They didn't believe in all that. And people started speaking up. That's when you had those movements. You had Malcolm X, you had Martin Luther King. And so everything was changing, all that Governor the Wallace and all that. So I'm just saying that it is important for our history to stay, last, and be shown. And it is not for the faint of heart, it's graphic, you know. So I'm not saying that, the justification of what's going on, but I'm saying I understand, you know. People be like, what about the black on black crime? Look, that's where they are, you know. The ingredients of poor diet creates a poor vibration. If there was a legitimate means for the government to care about, everything that it says it does in the Constitution, where all the money that funnels in and out was going to the right departments in these states, then sure, maybe I'll be like, yes, I'm proud to be an American by now, but no, it's segregation. It's always it's going to be that way, and so you the only thing of value has always been the entertainment. It's been one of the only big factors to get people of color out of the places where they are. Even if you grew up in the suburbs like me, I go back and I can look at all some of the guys that were black that are from, and a lot of them are fucking business, tech savvy, smart, wise, brilliant people. And sure, they get overlooked because there's a zillion other people that are close by that were have the same degrees as they do, but they just have different skin. So that's what happens if so you can't expect people to be like, oh man, yeah, dude, well, you believe in this, you believe in that, and all that stuff doesn't speak for everybody. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, I mean, you can stop right there. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide the common defense, promote the general warfare. None of that stuff makes any sense to minorities because there's no evidence, there's no proof that it even works for us. So the immigration stuff to me is BS. Long before there was a border, the Mexico and this country, which is Lakota, Turtle Island, they were their families were conjoined. They'd walk the sands and the grounds and the grasslands together, and hence the skin tones that are different and the hair tones and all this other stuff. And there's different languages in between, So some stayed south, some stayed north. So you can't just erect a government and, it's fear, So everything that's in the Constitution are torn pages, or they just weren't written for us. So and people be like, Barack Obama did this, and there's black people that talk shit about it. Be like, what did Obama do for us? Fucking nothing, probably. But I mean, I'll tell you what he did. He made you realize that you can do whatever it is that you want to do inside your heart if you believe in yourself and you're strong enough to do that. But not one month. If it was me, look, you can't have that kind of pressure, without other influences watching you. They have a fucking eye on the man. You know, what is he going to do? Save you from all these, problems in the inner city that you're having without being criticized? Give me a fucking break. In fact, what he did was, since he's biracial and he's proud of his parents, and I think that's beautiful. But sure, he's going to, actively, when you look at somebody, you're going to judge them based on the color of their skin. And that happened to him. And he's received prejudice all his life, just like any other chocolate motherfucker, just like me, who is the lightest complected motherfucker that there is. But I defend myself. I'm skinny and shit. I used to be scrappy. I'll fight a motherfucker in a heartbeat, shit. But I mean, no, I make jokes and stuff like that. But I'm saying, look, you have to realize that if we don't share something that's worth value between one another when it comes to respecting, then you're just going to get these issues that are going to keep, recycling one another. And together, I think that means that first grade or whatever, when things start becoming important, that, yeah, sure, you made us learn English, you made us learn about science and the archaeologists and the Dr. Leakeys and all these names and stuff like that, folks. Teach us about the ones that were crumbled up and thrown into the fire then, and then that kind of equalizes things out. Or make it just as mandatory for white kids to learn about Africa and its regions then, you need the balance, Why is it important for us to speak this language? It never has been. It just, but they had to understand us in order to enslave us. So, and they couldn't, and they didn't want to. So they swapped our shit with their shit. And so that's the history that, people are ignorant about now, they feel like it's defamation of character, and it's not. So if you're defensive and you're mad and you hate what I'm saying, then you know what I'm saying is true. And you're still protecting the same shit as the motherfuckers that did that shit a long time ago, which is racism. It's not prejudice. Prejudice is prejudge. You prejudge a motherfucker right down the street. We're like, that's a suspicious looking person. But then I come to meet them and then they don't fit the images of that at all. They're not, you know what I mean? Like, I can see this guy driving in a fucking truck. There might not be any insignias on it or any rebel flags. And you get close and it's just like this Dennis Menace looking dude peeing on something and a little sign under it or whatever like that. And I'd be like, man, when he gets out, I bet you he's going to stare me down. And then you come to find out you have something in common with that person. So, the American flag doesn't mean crap to me at all. Who made it? What was her name? Betty. I don't know. So Betsy or something like that. She was a woman in Virginia, whatever. 50 stars and blah, blah, blah. We had, and no one had any insider input for it, So, if you want a country where everyone gets along, then can we have representatives that get along from these cultures as we grow, so ultimately we can blend instead of the segregation or separation. Fucking separation anxiety. Look, everything looks so suspicious. You're bringing in South Africans and you're saying they're seeking asylum, and then it's contradictory to all the things, and then ultimately it's revealing a bigger picture. Like, just fucking flat out say it. You want America to be white? My girl's white. So what? I've dated so many white girls. And the women that I've dated that have been different, different cultures, different parts of white girls. I've dated black girls, Hispanic girls, and I don't really have a preference. I just did stuff, but you can learn from it. Maybe after a while you develop preferences, You're in different cultures, and I considerably was mixed up into my interest of art all the time. But Lindsay and I have been together for 8 years, and I guess in the beginning, she had, she would listen more, and then now that we're far more established, uh, I catch her learning on her own, and that's beautiful because it's not that she's just interested; she's interested in her on her own, and of course, it takes influence. So that's what it is with us. Is if you got little Ruby Bridges going to school with all those white people sitting in the back of the classroom, uh, everything in there is influencing her to learn on the same curve and path. So I'm not saying that all white people need to go to the black school then. Why don't you listen to a black family? Go lay with them. Go live. Go find out. Extend it. Why be separate if you have all you have the ability. Black people don't have the ability. We're afraid. Those black people in those communities are afraid. And when they do come out, they go to like Lake, Shore Drive or whatever like that. People are afraid. They're like, there's some black kids and they came and they robbed and they pillaged and they looted and they stole and yeah, they don't got no damn money. But I mean, it's adventurous, to get out of the hood. And who built all those buildings? Their ancestors. Still can't even. Their job applications go straight to the motherfucking garbage can. So I'm not saying I justify people looting and stealing, but I'm saying, you know what? It goes back to who was picking cotton and who wasn't. So it's identity, and that becomes more cerebral. That's more of what's inside your brain instinctually. And so that's how you're just like, man, I feel for that person. You know what I'm saying? People are like, you got to work hard, man, and you got to do this and you got to do that, and you don't got to do any of that shit, man. Other people laid the map, laid down tracks for us that work hard. I mean, sure, shit is owed, even when we still strive to work hard and be independent and be our best generation after generation, we're still last picked. I was watching something the other day where a comedian was talking about, which is true. My name is Daniel Nigel Bird. So without knowing who I am, if I sent in my resume to somewhere, they'd be like, oh, that's okay. Daniel's biblical. It's one of our names. It's European. Let's give him a shot. And then, get the interview or whatever like that. And then they find out how articulate I am. And then I'm like, okay, well, this is a Negro we can work with. But if my name was Darnell, and I wouldn't even made it that far. They would have just looked at that shit and like, oh, Darnell Watkins. Do that shit right into the motherfucking garbage can. So you have to understand, the community is different. Most people live their entire lives avoiding other people. Not me. I got my ass down in all of it, in the grips and the roots and the nitty gritty. All cultures, all music, my dynamics. I don't even know what to call myself. I'm just a dude, man. I mean, hip hop, hardcore rock, fuck around with all the punk bands, when I was younger, and I dig it all. And so for people to be like MAGA and I'm so American, and no, you're fucking not, because it's just created. It was created a couple hundred years before you even came out your mama. You know what I'm saying? So, if you're proud to be like Irish, a lot of people are like, I'm Irish. I'm like, well, make up your fucking mind. You're just white if you're over here. Then if you're telling us to go the fuck back to Africa, and why would you say that? We didn't ask to come here. So take your ass back to Ireland then. And then maybe if you get over there, since it's so easy for you to find and you got them all dialed on your mantle, then somebody will accept you. Doubtfully though, because of tariffs and all this other shit that people are focusing on, but they're not intricately, looking into. So yes, I'm progressive. Yes, I am liberal and I'm a leftist. And, like, you sway too far to the left, man. I mean, I can meet people in the middle. I can think, I have friends that are on the right. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. But I mean, it's regurgitating the same old things that I've heard since I was in like second grade. I mean, I was around when Ronald Reagan was Reaganomics and all that stuff. Maybe I didn't understand it, but then as time goes by, you maybe some of the music or the expressions that come from that, and you go back and listen to the lyrics, and I understand. I could put them together. I could be like, oh, that's why people are tripping out on this person. And then you go back and you look at your life, and maybe there's some things that were frozen in time that you didn't notice then. And then I'm like, oh, this is why this couldn't happen. This is why I wasn't able to kick it. I've had kids grow up in Matson be like, my dad says I can't play baseball with you anymore. The motherfuckers that shared the fence with us, they lived on Oriole, right? We lived in Pheasant. It was the Bartholomew family. I played little leagues with their brother. I mean, there was two of them. It was Michael and Billy. And I remember one time Billy came over and he's like, "Dude, we can't play baseball anymore." Um, and my dad told me why, and I was like, "That's bogus." So anyhow, this is about an hour long. I mean, it's only because I'm choosing not to be on Facebook so much anymore. I have lots of writing that I need to do here. I've been working on manuscripts, and I juggle back and forth between that and then a novel. So it's going to take a long time for me to get all that together. But I'm trying. I really am trying. And I just wanted to post this, because if I'd have gone live, then I'd have been too distracted. I'd have been far more goofy and animated. I know I look tired. It's been a long day, woke up and this is my day off. Mondays and Tuesdays I don't work, and then half days on Wednesday, and then from Wednesday to Sundays I work throughout. I went to the dog park today, and Penny got beat up, so I was worried about that. She's bleeding out of her eye, and I called Lindsay, and it was so bright out it was hard to tell, but it was nothing but a little scratch on the top of her eyelid. So I've gone to the emergency vet, and it's $200. That costs, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So winding down. Lindsay worked a double today. We have a lot of good, exciting things going on in our life right now. And, when the time is right, we'll talk about those. We didn't get out much this summer. We went to Wisconsin, visit some friends, Carla Kester out there. But we're going to Colorado in like a month. That'll be really fun. But other than that, everything else is going really well, but I just don't want to type and then post, and I'll make fun of that motherfucker, but it just consumes so much time. And then, you get screen headaches, and then it's bad for your sight. And I noticed the 3 weeks that I was off, my cognitive skills were even better. I just felt better. I felt less clouded. It gives me the ability to, do art around here, get on YouTube, take more guitar lessons, learn some blues, put out the vibe. Anyhow, I just wanted to say I love you guys out there, and this has been the longest rant ever. This is the longest random, video I've ever made, and I'm gonna post it. I don't even care. So, I just had a friend from Hawaii that was in my DMs on Instagram, and it's like, you can't hide too long, motherfucker. You done got off Facebook, but you're on Instagram. I was photoshopping, just looking for people and more fun things to view rather than me focusing on dissing Donald Trump. I love Gavin Newsom. I love what a lot of the Democrats are doing. I do. There's a lot of things about them that I don't like, But I mean, we can talk about the Epstein shit and all that other stuff at some other time. I'm not professional. I'm not a podcaster. Maybe I could be. Maybe I should be. I don't fucking know. I just don't even know how well social media is anymore. It's just bypassed. And, everyone uses it. Everyone does it. So I don't even know if its strengths are, uh, if it even has that ability. It's not as powerful as it once was because it's been abused. And, you know, that seems to be the problem. You just move on to the next thing. So this might not be the right form to communicate, but I just wanted to put some light, since I'm always using my words on there, and sometimes I drift away and I put the poems out there, and I probably should do that more because that at least kind of adds to other people's imaginations rather than me be angrily, posting. But my battery's gonna die, and I just wanted to say I love all of you, even the people that I've gotten into it with over the course of these years. But I mean, if it's personal, it's personal. We'll deal with it when we see it, when we see one another. But I have a memory like an elephant. I don't be forgetting. But I'm not violent. I just things that with the Trump administration I can't see. And I don't hate Republicans, but I mean all of them uh, ignore. They have the ability to ignore things. I'm not saying all of them are racist, but it's not off the table for Republicans. So, you know, that's where we're at. Anyhow, peace.